You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron. Now here's your host, Ethan Haristadoulou.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Haristadoulou, and it's that time again. Thursday night football is upon us today, and we are making our prediction for this matchup going into week number 12 of the NFL. As always, I invite you all to comment down below. Let me hear from you all. Who do you like in tonight's matchup? Who's coming home with the win and why? And remember, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We always do our full week predictions the following day, so we'll get them out tomorrow on Friday. But that being said, we have ourselves the Steelers going into Cleveland to take on the Browns in what I would consider kind of an ultimate trap game scenario for the Steelers here. Yes, Cleveland 2-8, down and out, season going down the toilet. But when it comes to the AFC North, these games are different. And we see that every single season, no matter how good or bad one or the other team is. These teams in this division come to play and play each other as hard as possible. So while I want to sit here and go, yeah, Pittsburgh, easy win, all said and done, see you guys tomorrow, it might not be that simple. Now, first and foremost, for Cleveland, protecting the football is going to be key in this matchup here. They've had a really tough time protecting the football this season. They're averaging just about one turnover per game right now with 12 total on the season. Pittsburgh, their defense, tied for fourth in takeaways with 19 on the year. They are very aggressive. They go after the football and they look to take the football away from you, so Cleveland has to protect it. That being said, as far as some matchups that I'm looking at here, first thing I'll be looking at is going to be Cleveland's offensive tackles versus guys like Nick Herbig, TJ Watt, Preston Smith, the outside pass rushers of this defense here. Pittsburgh does only rank about 16th in overall sack rate and then 10th in pressure rate. So a pretty good unit, I would say, to the least. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because Cleveland has not been necessarily great at protecting the quarterback. Now, they have been better since Jameis Winston has come into the fold, whether that has to do with just Deshaun Watson and how long he was holding onto the football before letting it go. Whatever that may be, there has been some noted improvement, but Cleveland has allowed 46 sacks this season, which is most in the NFL, and they have a 10.6% sack rate as well, which is second highest in the league. Again, numbers have gotten a little bit better over the last few weeks since Watson stepped out and Jameis Winston stepped in, but it is something worth keeping an eye on because TJ Watt is as good as they come. Nick Herbig has really been impressing. Preston Smith, a noted pass rusher who's been really good for the duration of his career as he slowly works his way and integrates his way into the Steelers defense. It'll be interesting to see how guys like Jermaine Ifedi and right tackle Tyler Conklin handle this matchup here. Left tackle Dan Moore versus Myles Garrett on the other side is the other matchup I'm going to be looking at. These two guys have faced off quite a bit over the last few years in their career as they've matched up 141 times on pass rushes since 2021. In that time frame, Myles Garrett has found some decent success, 26 pressures and 4 sacks over those 141 matchups altogether. Dan Moore this season, though, as far as his numbers look, this is according to PFF, he's been credited with 18 pressures allowed and 4 sacks on the season. So I'll be very curious to see how this matchup unfolds because they've seen each other quite a bit over the last few years, and it's one of those where I feel like it's been a little bit even between the two if you look at the numbers at the very least. So it's not like one has really dominated the other, despite the fact that Myles Garrett is one of the best to do it in the game at his position. So give some credit to Dan Moore here. He hasn't been a slouch completely against Myles Garrett, so it'll be a really good opportunity to see this matchup once again. A couple other things I have here. Cornerback Denzel Ward going up against George Pickens. Reason I picked this out here when I was looking at where guys line up, the numbers and things like that. Denzel Ward primarily lining up on the left side of the defense about 85% of the time, according to the NFL's next-gen stats. And then if you look for George Pickens, where he typically lines up on the football field, 47% of his snaps roughly are on the left outside spot on the field here. That's according to RotoWire, so shout out to those places for those numbers there. Denzel Ward, one of those guys that's been around, and he's been about as good as anybody for basically his entire career. And George Pickens right now is on a career trajectory where it's literally just kind of going straight up right now. I tell everyone whenever he comes up in conversations, whether it's at work or just with friends, George Pickens, in my opinion, has some of the most just impressive hands when it comes to high skill catches. It's insanity. It feels like like magnets, like he has them in his hands. Or if he was putting stickum on them, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody came out with that information, because he is incredible with what he can do in some of those tough gotta catch it type of situations. He just circus catch after circus catch. It's a living highlight reel. So we have two of the best at what they do going head to head in this matchup here. There's a lot to really like about this one. And then the last thing that I'm looking at, and one that I think will be unfortunately for what it has been, coming back from such a serious injury, Nick Chubb hasn't really had quite the performances that he's been looking for prior to his injury. So the way you see things right now, he's coming off his best statistical average in a game of 4.5 yards per attempt versus New Orleans, but his season high is only about 52 yards. So he hasn't really been able to get it going, and he's going up against now a Pittsburgh Steelers run defense that currently ranks 6th in rushing yards allowed to running backs this season, with an overall run stuff success rate of about 20%, a little bit over 20% technically, which is good for 6th best in the league. If Nick Chubb can't get going here, the Pittsburgh Steelers defense might be able to really start to get after Jameis Winston, pin their ears back and just kind of let it fly and go after him. And that does give me some concern for Cleveland's end. So there is a lot to look at in this game. There's a lot of intriguing matchups here, a lot of really good players. So despite the current situation of the Cleveland Browns, a lot of really big name, fun guys to watch, especially as they match up each other. Overall, though, there's really not a whole lot to look at in terms of injuries. I will say not having Jedrick Wills is going to be obviously an issue for Cleveland. And then on the other side of things, you have Alex Highsmith. He's obviously been out now for a little bit with his ankle injury. He's not going to be playing as well. Besides that, fairly healthy rosters to this point in the season here. Should be good to go as far as everyone else has been listed on the practice injury report right now from what I've been seeing here. Like Myles Garrett didn't participate Tuesday, but he was limited Wednesday. I fully expect him to play. I'd be shocked if he doesn't end up playing in this matchup here. And if he doesn't, that would spell doom, I would say, for this Cleveland Browns defense and team altogether. But as for who I think is going to win here, like I said, this is a trap game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. You can't just come in sleepwalking and expect a victory because you're 8-2. The Cleveland Browns are 2-8, and they're in a really bad way right now. It's a little bit more. It's a little bit more complicated than that. These AFC North games are always just absolutely wild, and anything can happen. The last time these two teams matched up, Cleveland was the better team in the matchup, and ultimately only won 13-10. So that should kind of give you an idea of how these types of games in the AFC North can go. And I mean, you look at the matchup that we just had between the Steelers and the Ravens literally last week. You have 18 points is what won you a football game. 6 field goals between the Ravens and the Steelers. That's not something I don't think anyone really had pinned. I mean, if you wanted to say it was going to be a lower scoring game, sure. I don't think anyone had Steelers for 6 field goals winning another football game on their bingo cards. But I do think that the Pittsburgh Steelers come out victorious in this one here. We've seen the Browns trade some key players away prior to the trade deadline, and it's clear that they are kind of they're working their way towards the end of the season with the way things have gone, and the trajectory of this season started out pretty poorly and has not gotten any better at all. So I do like the Steelers, and I like them something along the lines of like maybe 20-17. I know that sounds a little bit crazy considering the state of the Browns, and maybe there is a chance that Pittsburgh just runs amok and absolutely demolishes them. I wouldn't be surprised there, but with the way the Steelers tend to play football sometimes, lower scoring games are typically their wheelhouse. I mean, we got the 28-27 matchup earlier this year between them and the Commanders, which in my opinion is like a rarity for Steelers football over the last few years. You typically get those lower scoring contests, and again, AFC North clash, I expect more of that. I think maybe the Browns defense could give Russell Wilson and company a little bit of some issues still. They're still a pretty good unit, all things considered. So I'll take the Steelers 20-17, tighter contest, a grindier type of contest as well. I think it's definitely going to feel that way. And unfortunately, if you're looking for a very exciting matchup on Thursday Night Football, we don't typically get them too often, and I don't really think this is going to be the week for it either. So let me know in the comments section down below, who do you like going into this matchup here? Pittsburgh Steelers, Cleveland Browns for a massive upset trap game style. Let me know. I would love to hear from you all. But as always, if you made it to the end, greatly appreciate it. Make sure you check out my predictions for the rest of the week tomorrow. But I will see you all next time. Have a good one.